In this video, you'll discover how to spawn infinite mobs in dungeons, to create super fast experience gates, how to locate and repeatedly kill exotic rares and level up in minutes, how to find hidden armies of friendly mobs to grind for you, and most important, the fastest and most highly optimized leveling techniques in the game currently. As you probably worked out by now, Dorothy, you are no longer in Kansas. This is not your standard leveling guide. I am not going to be telling you to go and buy goblin gliders or which zones to level in. The methods in this video are high-powered strategies designed to bend or break the rules to an extent which some consider unnatural, to the extent that Blizzard issued strikes against and actually took down the previous 2 leveling guides I published. This is quite literally, without any exaggeration, the guide that Blizzard does not want you to see. Comprised of research carried out over 400 hours of personal playtime, this is the comprehensive guide to leveling in Battle for Azeroth. Hello and welcome to Archvelder's Hacks with Archvelder and his amazing hacks. Now, before you start, you'll want to stock up on the item Cracked Radanax's Control Gem and Gun Shoes. These items are very expensive, so you only want to purchase these if you already have a decent stockpile of gold. However, they greatly speed up questing by their enhanced travel time. This is as fast as a flying mount, the speed we're currently travelling at. The Cracked Radanax's Control Gem can only be stored one at a time in your actual bags. However, you can have an indefinite number waiting for you in the mailbox. There is no restriction on the number of gun shoes you can have, however. In this video, I'll be using full heirlooms, and I'll be creating a video specifically for new players without access to heirlooms in the near future. When selecting a character, bear in mind that, paradoxically, classes with healing specializations do more damage at lower level. This is because Blizzard didn't want to penalize healers during leveling, so they buffed their base damage abilities. Now, at endgame, the greater diversity of options made DPS classes better damage dealers, but early on, healers are strongest. For this reason, I would strongly recommend at the moment choosing a class with a healing specialization. You can change it later if you want to. Now, the classic method for the first 15 levels is simply to do the introductory quests and or mob grind. For Alliance, this location in Elwyn Forest is highly desirable for its instantly respawning murlocs. Some claim to be able to do this in as little as 15 minutes. I found 30 minutes was more representative. Once at level 10, you will want to port your leveling character to the Legion Broken Isles version of Dalaran. This is because the new Dalaran portal network is the best in game, allowing you to reach virtually any destination speedily. You can do this with a class trial mage, or a main, forming a group on Group Finder, logging out, logging in on your new character and joining the group, logging back in on your mage, creating a portal, accepting the invitation, and finally logging back in on your new character and using the portal. Once there, you can get a Hearthstone from the Leisure Demand Lounge. A simpler approach to get here is just to go to a capital city and get a friendly mage or pay them to open a portal to New Dalaran. This will save you a ton of time later in the game. Having reached level 15, there are a number of alternative paths you can take. Now, a new method that's emerged in this expansion is a unique form of rare spawn farming. Rare spawns are monsters that do not respawn within short intervals like most mobs, and consequently reward a high amount of XP, generally slightly less than that from a full quest. To show how fast you can gain XP using this strategy, I've taken my Tauren Paladin to this location at Baal Modan Excavation in the southern barrens of Kalimdor. Here there's a group of Tauren and dwarves constantly fighting, and both factions can get a very powerful battle shamped damage buff off their respective faction NPCs, which actually doubles their physical damage abilities. But that's not just why we are here. There are 4 rare mobs that spawn in close proximity in this area, and usually at least 3 are up whenever you log in after an interval. Killing each of them awards a significant amount of experience. Now, this is an amazing option for people who periodically just have 5 minutes to log on and play Warcraft before going to work, as every time they log on, the rares will be up again, meaning they can level very fast in terms of absolute playtime. For players who want to play for longer periods, there's an alternative strategy which involves forming a group with another character on your account, or possibly a class trial, or even a level 1 if you could fly them over to the relevant location, on a 2-seater flying mount. As you can see here, I formed a group between my high-level hunter and my low-level paladin, and that allows my paladin to skip over to my hunter's realm, and that allows my paladin to kill all the rares that he's just killed on his own realm on the hunter's realm, and that creates an amazing bonanza of experience. Herbs and ore nodes will also be available on the new realm. Finally, you can just thin out the regular mobs fighting in the pit below. I like to kill as many dwarves as possible. I hope no one uses that sentence against me if I enter politics in future. I'd like to kill as many dwarves as possible before they start individually respawning. This specific area might get overfarmed in future, so the point is not to necessarily come to this exact location, but to show you how to find clusters of rares and clusters of mobs and farm them effectively. There are lots of similar locations all over Azeroth. Most players use the add-on NPC scan to help them find rares. Cross-realm rare farming can yield up to 5 levels per hour played in the 15 to 60 bracket. The following method can be used by both factions and is truly amazing, probably the best overall dungeon method from 20 to 60. It was developed by a genius who contacted me here on this channel that I know of only as Laptop Menace. Group up a high level player and a low level player via Group Finder, and this can be done with characters on the same account. Have the high level player enter the dungeon and kill the Scarlet Crusader mobs around the piles of bones which spawn the zombies, but don't destroy the piles. Have the high level player leave the group. Then have the low level player enter the dungeon and kill the zombies which spawn. These mobs won't trouble you and provide amazing experience, especially for classes with good AoE. My warrior here was getting almost 3 levels an hour unrested, even in the 50 to 60 bracket using this strategy. With the use of a guild banner and or the Dark Moon top hat or Monk Enlightenment, you can obviously do even better. That's amazing for a strategy which really just requires you to spam one button continuously. There's a similar opportunity at Blackrock Hold, just outside Blackrock Mountain. This is a unique location in that the mobs are numerous and respawn quickly. Now, a level appropriate character is not going to be able to kill all these mobs, so what we do is use a class trial Brewmaster monk to put down an ox statue to draw aggro. This essentially pacifies all the mobs and allows your leveling character to burn them down without retaliation. Here I'm getting 15% XP for just over 2 minutes grinding at level 59. You can then use the realm switch method I mentioned in the section on farming rares to get fresh packs of these mobs. Alternatively, you can go to the east where there's a smaller but similar group of Blackrock mobs. And when you kill this smaller group, the original mobs outside of Blackrock Hold begin to respawn. Now, while this technique is best done by multiple players or a multi-boxer, it can be accomplished solo by using a variant of the Method 0 technique you may be familiar with from my previous videos. I'll give a link to that below. The Blackrock farming method yields between 3 and 6 levels per hour in the 20 to 60 bracket, depending on exactly what you're doing. The following method is not the fastest method of grinding experience, but it's definitely the easiest and one of my favourites, as it can be accomplished almost but not entirely AFK. If you complete the Redridge Mountains questline, beginning at level 15, up to the final quest, Showdown at Stonewatch, you will be given access to the NPCs of Bravo Zero Company, 4 very powerful NPCs who will kill anything in a few hits, and who also give you some very overpowered buffs. These NPCs can be taken anywhere in the zone, and it is full of fast or instantly respawning gnolls and murlocs. This makes for some very easy semi-AFK leveling, getting around 2 levels per hour from 20 to 60. The reason you can't do it completely AFK is that every 5 minutes or so Bravo Zero Company just despawn. However, you can leave it for minutes at a time and pay very little attention to it whilst doing something else. Also, if you want to increase the experience gain, you can kill the rares in the zone, of which there are many. Now, Bravo Zero Company are only accessible to Alliance players. However, there are 2 amazing quest pet NPCs you can get in Hillsbrad Foothills for Horde players. You quest through Hillsbrad Foothills until you get the quest Freedom for Lydon, and then you go to the edge of the zone, move in and out until you manage to get the 2 NPCs Apothecary Lydon and Johnny Awesome to glitch out of their intended zone, as I'm demonstrating here. Once you've glitched them out of the zone, they will go more or less anywhere with you. They're very powerful and can take down anything in the surrounding zones. A similar glitch is available to Alliance in the Western Plague Lands. If you journey down the Underworld quest chain, you'll eventually come to this quest, Combat Training, accessible from level 35, where you're given access to 4 farmers, and you glitch them out of their intended area in exactly the same manner as you do with Johnny Awesome and Apothecary Lydon. Both the Johnny Awesome glitch and the farmer glitch are older glitches that have been in the game since Cataclysm, which I've covered numerous times previously. So rather than go into further detail, I'm just going to link to the original videos below. And I'm just going to briefly cover one more classic glitch, which is the quest Lost in the Darkness, which you can get at low level in Silver Pine Forest. Basically, you join a raid group through Group Finder, and you attack some of the webs in the zone, and then you'll get these Orc Sea Dogs to spawn infinitely. They last about 10 minutes. Now I'm just going to cover the topic of dungeon soloing. Dungeon soloing used to be quite easy before the introduction of patch 7.35, and I always found it challenging and enjoyable. After patch 7.35 was introduced, the higher health pools of dungeon mobs made it much more difficult, to the extent that soloing dungeons is impossible for most classes and specs at an appropriate level, even with very good gear. The one significant exception I found was the Holy Paladin. As you can see here, I'm soloing Ragefire Chasm. However, while I found it possible to solo dungeons, it still wasn't efficient, yielding just over 1 level and taking 35 minutes to complete. So I wasn't motivated to explore soloing further as a means of gaining experience. That said, my Paladin was geared out with nothing more than basic looms, so you could probably significantly improve on that time. Random battlegrounds are the best basic source of experience in the game right now. For example, in Warsong Gulch at level 18, a single win took me up an entire level. At 24, a 5-minute loss still got me 100k XP, which is almost a fifth of that necessary to level up. And this persists right through the game. At 74, I got 44% of a level for a 10-minute win in Deepwind Gorge. Indeed, I leveled my main almost entirely in BGs from 110 to 120. As a general rule, on average, you'll get about half a level for a battleground win. The only real downside is that at lower levels, the queue times for random battlegrounds can be quite long, 10 minutes or in some cases more. There are many ways to increase your win rate at Battlegrounds, and I've published numerous tricks on this channel over the years, most of which are actually still active. The subject is far too complex to go into detail in a general leveling guide, and for that reason I'm going to be making a specific PvP leveling guide in the near future. That said, it's worth pointing out that at the moment, if you can get anywhere close to a 50% win rate, then you will be doing far better in terms of gaining experience from Battlegrounds than any player versus environment related activity, unless you're using some kind of angle. It's also worth noting that Battleground queue pop-ups persist for 1 minute and 30 seconds. Using the \timer command, you can make the most of your time in world rather than wasting it in the starting area of the battleground. Now, pet battles have an amazing synergy with random battlegrounds. By far the fastest basic way to level up is a combination of pet battles and random battlegrounds. There's a specific method to do this. The way to get good experience from pet battling is to take your low level character to a high level zone and battle there with wild pets using high level pets of your own. A guy called DC Flint on Reddit popularized this strategy and recommended taking your low level to Mistfall Village here in the Vale of Eternal Blossoms in Pandaria. I tried this strategy. It does provide excellent XP at very low levels and is the fastest technique from 1 to 20 by far. A major problem with the strategy is that there are far too many people pet battling in Mistfall Village, so here are some alternative locations. This one is just outside of Borellas on the coastline, and there's another excellent location in Frostfire Ridge near the Flight Master Point. It gets harder to level up as you rise through the levels with pet battling. At 22 it takes you 12 minutes or about 10 pet battles to reach the next level. While at 49 the player must win 22 pet battles to reach 50. So your leveling rate is cut to 2 levels per hour. By level 99 it takes almost an hour to reach 100 by pet battling, and it's no longer competitive with other methods. Finally, people were recommending various complex pet battle strategies. I found that the Terraclaw Hatchling, which you can find here, was perfectly capable of soloing all wild encounters and healing itself without any additional pets, once you'd leveled it to 25. 60 to 90 is the slowest and most controversial bracket of this expansion, and has caused the most complaints. If you have no strong aversion to PvP and or pet battles, I would seriously consider doing those and bypassing this bracket altogether, as that approach is much faster than questing or dungeons. One interesting strategy I did find involved Magister's Terrace. Here the friendly Shattered Sun NPCs at the start of the dungeon can be glitched to enter battle. If you kite hostile mobs to the start of the dungeon, they can be aggroed by various cleave type abilities, and in fact you can actually get them to solo the first boss, Selin Firehard. Aggro Firehard outside of the room he resides in, and he'll fight you for a few seconds, and then he'll run back into the room to draw power from a crystal. During this time you should then run back to the entrance portal and watch as the Shattered Sun NPCs spring into life and charge Firehard. It is strangely moving watching these NPCs charge the boss and actually do something for once. Having killed Fireheart, you could then advance to the second chamber and kill the Bright Scale worms in front of the second boss, Vexalis. The worms give a nice stacking damage buff, so they can be soloed fairly easily. Now, although dungeon boosting and the similar solo technique I used in my previous videos that I called Method Zero have been heavily nerfed by Blizzard, it is still possible for high-level players to run low-level players through the quests in dungeons, and it is worthwhile doing this at Hellfire Citadel and especially in Auchindoun, where there are a large number of dungeons in close proximity. For example, there are 4 quests in Mana Tombs worth over 25% of a level, so it is worth doing this given it only takes 4 or 5 minutes, or even less with a fast class such as a Monk or Demon Hunter. The following strategy can be utilised by anyone grouped with a Death Knight in Auchenai crypts. Done right, it should be able to trivialise the dungeon for all members of a party. The Unliving Soldier mob in front of me here has an amazing aura. It's just described as a protection aura. And when the Death Knight uses their Control Undead spell on the Unliving Soldier, that protection aura benefits the Death Knight and anyone in their party. And the protection aura gives the Death Knight and all other members of the party 343 extra armor. That's almost the entire armor contribution from all the items the Death Knight is wearing, creating massive damage mitigation. This appears to be a scaling error caused by the recent stat squib. Now, you don't actually have to be a Death Knight to benefit from this, you just have to explain the situation to a Death Knight running through that dungeon. The Death Knight can actually just try and solo the dungeon with that protection aura, but it's actually better to use another mob, the Unliving Stalker, for that purpose. The Unliving Stalker gives you a continuous rolling massive haste buff of 50%, and that trivialises a lot of the solo encounters in this dungeon. As you can see here, when I accidentally pull too many mobs on my heavily undergeared Death Knight, the attack speed buff just about keeps me alive. By the way, if you're trying to solo this, I wouldn't actually recommend trying to clear the bosses. It seems to be more efficient just to kill the trash in the first chamber repeatedly. Finally, if you repeatedly use Control Undead on the unliving mobs in this dungeon, you'll eventually trigger a really amazing effect, which is too hot to discuss on YouTube. Going back to the Unliving Soldier Protection Aura buff, it's worth pointing out that this actually stacks, so if you have multiple Death Knights in your group will be virtually invincible. The Ring of Blood quest chain in Nagrand Outlands is very easy to accomplish by grouping with a high level player. The Ring of Blood quest chain is a series of epic encounters, such as the following Titanic battle. If you can't get a high-level character to help you, then just form a group with one of your high-level alts and have them fulfill the quest objectives, while the low-level character turns them in. You can also repeat the whole process at the Ampitheatre of Anguish in Zuldrak. The procedure for completing these quests is exactly the same. It's 40% of a level for a few minutes' work. This area in the Black Temple in Shadow Moon Valley Outland has an unusually high amount of Demon Hunter mobs that have relatively low health pools. Unusually for such a high concentration of mobs, they award full experience. As with the Blackrock hold farming method mentioned earlier, we use a class trial monk to group up and pacify the mobs before the leveling character uses AoE attacks to gain XP at super speed. Here, one clear of all these mobs gets 5% of a level, which at level 79, as my Death Knight here is a lot. With some classes you can do this in almost a minute. A Blood Death Knight takes a bit longer. Now, this is not like the Blackrock hold farm in that the mobs cannot be forced to respawn fast. For this reason, you can either combine this with other activities to maximise the value of your playtime, or you can use the realm switching method I mentioned in the section on farming rares near the start. Again, this technique can most easily be practiced by multiple players or multi-boxing. However, it can also be relatively easily accomplished solo by using method 0. Just remember that your leveling character will only have a minute to kill all the mobs before the statue expires. This area of the Twilight Highlands has multiple Dragonmaw and Wildhammer dwarf mobs engaged in perpetual combat, much as we see in Belmodan Excavation earlier in the video. And like Belmodan, the orcs here use a version of Battle Shout which isn't scaling properly, and gives my Tauren Death Knight an extra 254 attack power. That's huge. It actually increases the damage on my Tauren's physical abilities by almost 400%. Now, so what, you may think, because this buff has a 2-minute duration. Actually, this type of buff is a fantastic way to run dungeons super fast if you discover the structure of how looking for dungeon teleportation works. You can actually use this method at any level and with any damage buff that zones, but I found it particularly effective to use this buff in the 80 to 90 bracket while leveling. To give an example here, I entered this dungeon with the Battle Shout buff and used it to my advantage whilst dealing with the trash at the start of the dungeon. We then deal with Wise Mary, and immediately I teleport out of the dungeon, and then I get the Overpowered Battle Shout buff on me again, get stuck in combat for a few seconds, and then I teleport back to the Temple of the Jade Serpent. And you can see I haven't really lost any time. I get back to the start of the dungeon at about the same time as the other players in the group do. So the buff then helps me deal with the trash, and we down the second boss, the library boss, and again I teleport out of the instance, get the Overpowered Battle Shout buff, and I return to the start of the instance, and this time I'm actually getting to the next stage of the instance faster than the other players in the group. And indeed, you can clear most of the trash before the other players arrive. After the third boss was killed, I just had time to nip in and nip out of the Twilight Highlands with the Battle Shout buff one final time, before we kill the Shah and finish the dungeon. And you can use the same strategy in more linear dungeons if you know where the teleport points are in a specific dungeon. For example, we've just downed Hoptalis in Stormstout Brewery here, and nip out of the dungeon, nip to the Twilight Highlands, get the Battle Shout debuff, and I get return here. And as you can see, it doesn't take me long to catch up with the rest of my group. Now, once you've reached level 90, you can use the time-ordered method of bypassing the Draenor introductory scenario and go to the Timeless Isle. And in the southeast corner, there's this underwater cave, and you sit on the chairs and click on the fire, and that will teleport you straight to Draenor. And from there you can fly down to Shadow Moon Valley or Frostfire Ridge to set up your garrison, depending on your faction. Once in Draenor, things get a lot easier. Many players claim to be able to clear the entirety of the expansion in 2 to 3 hours, mainly by clearing bonus objectives and finding treasures. using add-ons such as handy notes. To achieve that, you'll need very good gear and enchants, the 20% XP potion from completing the introductory quests to your garrison, and flying. Now, there's a couple of interesting advanced strategies here. In all zones in Draenor, some special abilities are awarded, such as an artillery barrage in Talador, or a tank in Nagrand. These are very powerful abilities, time-gated by long cooldowns. Now, if you enter an arena, or an arena skirmish, these cooldowns are reset. For this reason, if you've ever considered trying out Arena, it is a good idea to do so in this bracket. It doesn't really matter if you win or lose, because you get decent XP anyway. A loss at 96 gives you 2.5% of a level, and the reset of your overpowered abilities. The reset of these cooldowns allows you to gather multiple mobs together and get a ton of experience. Now, an alternative option for those who don't have flying or just don't want to do the bonus objectives plus treasures approach that most use for Draenor is to come to this infamous Goren cave in Frostfire Ridge. First discovered by Umran, this is an amazing source of fast experience. And you can see how this works here. Walk across the eggs and tiny Goren spawn. Now, provided you aggro them, they'll die within a few seconds and you'll get full experience. They'll explode when you do so, doing a heavy amount of damage. And for that reason, it's best to do this with the assistance of a Brewmaster Monk statue. As soon as you hit 98, you'll want to head out to Legion. So go to Holgar Stormax outside the gates of Orgrimmar, or alternatively Recruiter Lee in Stormwind Harbour. And take the quest to be prepared. And this gives you some really interesting buffs which you can use all the way through your Legion experience. Fly down towards the harbour and on your right you'll find a polished armour buff. And that increases your armour by 6%, which is well worth having. The polished armour buff lasts 1 hour, and if you move on down, on your left, you'll get access to a holy enchantment buff, again lasting 1 hour. Now, what this enchantment does is give your weapon a chance to proc extra holy damage when fighting demons and undead. Now, there aren't many undead on the Broken Isles, however there are obviously a ton of demons. Now return to Holgar Stormax or Recruiter Lee and go to New Dalaran. Now this will temporarily remove your access to the quest which gives you those enchantments. So if you want to refresh those enchantments, then you go to Archivist Elysiana. Now, Archivist Elysiana is on the left as you go into the Violet Citadel.
Hello.
Now, leveling through Legion is extremely simple because it has an excellent catch-up mechanism in the form of Deviant Invasions. If you tried to level an undergeared character in Legion before and struggled, don't worry, it is now trivial to do so with leveling greens. I'd also do the bonus objectives, which no one ever mentions, but they offer almost as much in the way of experience as the invasions do. Check invasiontimer.com for the time of the next demon invasion. Each invasion you complete will get you the best part of a level. And the experience doesn't stop at 110, they can be done to 111. And now you're finally in battle for Azeroth. And at this stage I'm tempted to say just quest and enjoy the experience, because it's really fantastic content. The art department has excelled itself as always. Some claim that island expeditions are a faster means of leveling from 110 to 120 than straight questing. I have no direct experience of that, but it does seem to be the case that a consensus is emerging that island expeditions are about 5 to 10% faster. I personally leveled mine mainly through random battlegrounds, and that was extremely quick, though that was mainly due to a freak series of wins. I barely lost a battleground. Now, there's going to be more leveling content on this channel in the near future. A lot of this stuff in this video will get fixed, so it's a good idea to try and work out the general principles behind the plays here, so you can develop your own methods to level quickly. And if you're really serious about optimizing your leveling and other aspects of the game, such as gold making, why not consider signing up to my super secret Patreon feed, where every method I discover is shared in real time, often methods that are too hot for YouTube. Thanks for watching. This has been Archfelder.
I'm out of range.